Alright guys, Tactical here today, and Black Ops 4 is well and truly out right now. I've had a few days to play it, but I thought I'd finish off the Rostermania stuff because there's been a few more teams to be announced, and I know that most of the people who would watch the other videos won't watch this one, but I know there'll be some fans at least of these players and of Evil Geniuses as an organisation that would be interested to hear my thoughts on the roster. So I thought I'd finish the job and cover this roster as well, because this is definitely a contender for at least getting in the Pro League, right? So all the teams that have the potential to get into Pro League, I'll probably talk about, and that's what I wanted to discuss today. So like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, and of course, Evil Geniuses, the reigning world champions as an organisation, but what does that matter when you're going to be forced, I guess, to drop all of your players? I talked a few weeks ago now about the Evil Geniuses team moving over to organisation of Team Envy. So that was Aches, Apathy, Silly and Assault joining Hook on that new team. So a completely new team of 5 on Evil Geniuses, and I think there was probably better teams out there to pick up. We'll talk about that a little bit more down the line, but if there's a squad of leftovers, I can't seem to stray too far from this one, I'm not going to lie. Maybe other teams will come out which will take the title away. But for now, Saints, Lacefield, Royalty, Goonja and Felony does not sound to me like a championship winning team, so I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below. So, Saints and Lacefield, apparently these guys have been wanting to team for a little bit. They were, well, Saints at least was on Echo Fox last season, didn't really have that much success. In my opinion, he's historically been a fantastic SMG player, right at the top of the line, leading a lot of the stat lines in the past. One of the best players to never win champs, you could say. We look at codcompstats.com, links to this will be down in the description box below. You have to scroll away down to find Saints here at a 1.02. This is not what you usually expect out of him. I guess John has a 1.02 as well when you look at the entire season, so maybe you could still say Saints did his job. And I guess the eye test to me said that Saints was still doing fine. Like, he had a lot of maps where he really took over the game. So John has a 1.06 in search, and actually Saints has a 1.14 in search, so I take it back what I said. This guy honestly had a surprisingly good year, all things considered, with the placements not being up to par. So not the best in respawn, but really strong showing in search, which is impressive considering he had Acro on his team as well with a 1.23. So his counterpart in Lacefield, this guy's been around quite a long time. Honestly, if you look at this roster from top to bottom, there is a lot of experience here. There's no one who you could say is the clear leader, I guess, but Saints, Lacefield, they've been around several years. Royalty as well made his name, I guess, back in Advanced Warfare. Felony as well around a similar time. All these, and Goonja, you know, he goes way back, right? So there's no clear leadership on this team. There's no one you're like, wow, he's going to be the real glue to a squad. But putting 5 kind of mishmash players together, you never know, it could work out very nicely, especially with the experience on the team. Evil Geniuses seems like a pretty quality organisation with a lot of good infrastructure behind them, so maybe they get a team house or something like that, get quality practice, and this team could go further than I expect them to, but you know, we'll continue going through things. So Lacefield this year was on Ghost Gaming for the majority of the season. He came alive really in Black Ops 3, remember that Cloud9 team where, of course, they beat Optic at CoD champs. But this season, you know, he's down here at a 0.97. Maybe he could use an assault rifle instead of an SMG. That's one of the things I'm worried about on this team, is that it is super SMG heavy. There's not a lot of AR talents on this team at all. Again, I'll touch on this a little bit more in a second, but Goonja's really the only assault rifle on this squad, and I'm trying to look through the rest of the players thinking who is even going to use an assault rifle, because if you watch any tournaments or any real gameplay of Black Ops 4 over the last few days, you know that the meta is crazy AR heavy right now. So 0.97 with an SMG, it's not exactly stellar, but then again, if you look at the KDs of the guys on this squad combined, you think, you know, where are these guys got their slaying power from? But I guess you do have to consider that most of these guys were playing the SMG role for their team, which means to some extent that given a bit more freedom to use what weapons they like, they should do better individually than they have done this year, being forced to play at the front line. Saints and Lacefield, they didn't team together this year, but they've been a rumoured team of 2. Very solid SMG players. They've proved their worth in the past, very talented on their day, but when you compare them to, I guess, the best SMG players of the year, the likes of Hoog, the likes of Kenny, I guess Scraps you could say as well, they don't quite seem to compete, but they definitely have the potential on their day, and Saints is a fantastic fantastic player. I really rate him. So they're joined by Royalty and Goonjar coming over from Lightning Pandas. Let's have a look at Lightning Pandas' result this year. They're teaming with Proto and Zotic at the start, played with Sensor for Birmingham when they actually had their best result of the year. They come top 12 at Champs as well with Theory. They picked him up for the pro points. And now Goonjar and Royalty splitting from the rest. Somewhat surprising to me. I thought Zotic was a good addition, and I believe he also has the capability to use an AR at times. Whereas instead, of course, they're going into this lineup with Fellow. I guess some replacement for Zotic, or whether Zotic decided to leave already. That's a roster that should be announced maybe in a few days' time. These guys really didn't have much success this year, and these are honestly similar placings to what I expect this team to have. But again, we'll see how it goes down the line. So Royalty, people have been talking about this kid for years, you know. High sensitivity, right? That's what everyone seems to say about this guy. He does have a crazy shot. He occasionally puts up a ridiculous highlight play. We look at the stats for the entire year. Royalty sitting at a 1.03. Very solid considering his role, mostly using an SMG. In the past, he has used an assault rifle. And I think if there's someone to pull out a second assault rifle, I guess on this team it would be Royalty. Goonjar, being the main assault rifle, he's my real concern here. Like, this is why I say this seems like a leftover team. If the best assault rifle you can get is Goonjar, then you're having problems, right? Because Goonjar had a 1.01 over the season. How the hell are you meant to compete with Method's team, FaZe, with Slash's team, 100 Thieves, with Dashy's team, Optic, with, you know, with Luminosity, with Formlon it, with Envy's assault? It's just not going to happen. At least your ARs aren't going to compete. And have your SMGs got the talent to take it to the stupid teams we have at the top? You know, there's no chance in my opinion. But Royalty, definitely a strong player. As I say, we've talked about him for years, and people are saying, oh wow, he's finally getting his opportunity on Evil Geniuses. That's not how I see it at all. If anything, this is a lateral move from his former team on Lightning Pandas, and he still hasn't really got his big break at the top, I would say, like someone like Abizi has on E United. So, as the final player on this roster, we're looking at Felony. Off at United, of course, he did his job on that team, right? He supported Pristini in the heavy aggressive role. He actually had some pretty good results towards the end of the year. They came 4th at Champs, and they had some better results towards the end of the season after he joined for Silly. But, you know, he's a role-based player, but he's not going to be a star player on the team. When you look at his kill death over the season, you know, he's down here at a 0.94, far from spectacular. 0.93 in search as well. Where am I looking? Here it is. So he's going to do his job, I guess, on the squad, but he's far from a standout player. He's, once again, I think a leftover SMG that needed to find a team and maybe is friends with these guys and has played with these people in the past. But if you're trying to build a top contending roster, I really don't think Felony is the guy you put on the team. No disrespect intended. And let's look at the role situation here. So we look at this team. Goonjar is going to be the main assault rifle. He's done it for years. Not the best kill-death ratio as I talked about, but I guess he'll do his job. Who's going to be his supporting assault rifle? We've all seen the meta for Black Ops 4. We know how crazy AR heavy it is. Pretty much everyone in yesterday's E-League tournament was using the Maddox. Like, there was maybe 3 Maddoxes a team. Maybe you swap out a Maddox for a Vapor at times. The Vapor, of course, you can have 2 times stock on it, which makes it super versatile and super mobile, and better than SMGs in many ranges. The ICR was also used a lot as a heavy from the back assault rifle that's kind of sluggish, but will do the job once you've got your sights up. And how many SMGs were we seeing? Maybe 1 per team. Occasionally, you know, Zuma was pulling out the CoD, the Saug, those sort of weapons. It reminds me a lot of Infinite Warfare at the start of the season when we would see like 3 K-bars or like 4 K-bars or 3 K-bars and an NV4. Occasionally we'd see an ERAD brought out. After the SMGs got buffed in Infinite Warfare, towards the end of the season you would occasionally see 2 ERADs on a map. But usually it was 1 ERAD, a couple of K-bars and an NV4. Sometimes you'd have 2 ERADs, depending on the map. So I see a similar thing happening with Black Ops 4. I think they're going to buff the SMGs to some extent, make them slightly more competitive with the assault rifles. There's probably going to be a couple of standout SMGs that people will start to use, but it'll be very specific cases. They won't be do-it-all weapons as they have been in CODs of the past. The assault rifles will dominate most of the engagements, and the SMGs will only be really useful when you're right up in their face, which isn't going to happen on all the maps. So, as far as I see it, from what I've seen so far, at least 2 assault rifles are going to be used this season, if not 3 on certain maps, especially with how versatile this Maddox and the Vapor, those weapons seem to be. So who's going to pull it out on this team? I personally cannot see an assault rifle in Felony's hands. Just doesn't fit with his playstyle at all. I know that Royalty can use one. Lacefield, I think, pulled one out from time to time in the World War II season. And I don't think Saints is going to go there. So I think Saints and Fellow are probably guaranteed to be SMGs. I guess if they are forced to use an assault rifle, it'll be pretty out of their comfort zone. And I don't think they'll play as well as they have the capability to. So that's really my worry for this team. I guess they've taken a risk by saying, okay, we'll be super SMG heavy and we'll try and catch off guard the teams that have built their team around more of a generic style. And we'll try and catch them off guard by being super aggressive. And hopefully we get the luck of the draw with how the meta ends up. But so far it doesn't seem to be going their way. So, as the last thing I wanted to talk about in this video is the pool play seeding for Vegas. So if you're not aware of this, for Vegas, the top 12 teams in terms of pro points, well, it's kind of complicated. The top 12 teams from Stage 2 of the Global Pro League will qualify as long as they retain 3 of their players. If they don't, then they are replaced by the next team with the most pro points. So this is credit to Nick Arts on Twitter. I'll link his Twitter down in the description box below if you're interested. So these are the pro point standings for Vegas, excluding the top 5, which are 100 Thieves, Luminosity, FaZe, those guys. So what I'm really interested here is the cutoff point. So 12 teams. I've blanked out the ones that haven't been officially announced yet, and they're pretty much rumoured, so I didn't want to say anything at this point. Maybe you can figure them out from the pro points totals at the side if you're really interested. So the top 12 teams based on these standings will go into pools, and the next 8 from 13 to 21 will battle it out on the Thursday, December 6th before Vegas. And I think it's a double elimination bracket, kind of like the last chance qualifier. If you win 2 before you lose 2, you make pools. If you lose 2 before you win 2, you go out or into the open bracket or something like that. And pools is such a huge factor this season. If you get into pools, you're guaranteed a pretty good placement, which means that you're guaranteed a spot in the qualifier for the Pro League in January. If you don't make pools, it's super up in the air and very risky. If you don't make Pro League this season, there's only one stage, remember. If you don't make it, you're out for the rest of the season unless you get picked up by a Pro League team. So this is super important, and Evil Geniuses on this current roster, considering the other rumoured rosters, they currently sit in this 13th place. They have no fear of being overtaken by anyone making any last minute roster changes below them, but they don't quite have enough pro points, as it seems right now, to get into the top 12, considering, of course, none of the players on this team are a squad of 3 from a Pro League team that come top 12 in Stage 2 last season. So, as it currently stands, Evil Geniuses would be competing against another 8 teams to make it into pools. Of course, you would expect them to qualify, but this is a pretty big deal if they fail to, because a lot of these teams you could underestimate. A lot of these guys you can see coming from the European region. You've got Spacely's team, which are not to be underestimated. Spacely, I believe, Morks and Maniac, they come top 8 at Champs this year. There's other teams here as well, especially from the ones from the European region. They'll likely be playing a slightly different style and could catch off guys like Evil Geniuses, who have been scrimming with some of the best North American teams, but maybe they haven't got the style down that the European guys do. That's an early game asymmetry we often see. So like if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this roster down in the comments below. Do you think they have any chance of making it deep in tournaments? Personally, I think if they break top 6, I will be impressed. I don't really see it happening. I think it's a huge downgrade for Evil Geniuses. And I think even a team like Mad Cat's team, who have more pro points and would actually have guaranteed them, or not necessarily guaranteed, but a very high likelihood of getting into pools at this point, they would have been, to me at least, a much more intelligent pickup than the guys they've gone with here. So I don't know whether that's a decision on whether they think they're going to be better, but personally, I honestly favour Mad Cat's team over EG, and Mad Cat's team also, to me, seems to have a better chance to guarantee the spot to get in the Pro League, and from there you can make roster changes as you wish. So if you're an Evil Geniuses fan, are you happy with this outcome? Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.